So I'm Bart Carey. I'm one of the elders here at Hope, and I love what you guys are going through. LDI Off-Road, I love this because I can relate with where you're at, right? You guys are here wanting to dig deeper into Scripture, wanting to understand more about theology, but everyone here also has a job that they're doing, whether they're in school or they're doing a job, and you're trying to look at how can I bring forward the theology that I'm learning at Hope, how can I learn more about that, and how can I apply that to my everyday life, right? So I'm one of you. I am a student of this. I am not an expert. It's something, like Rob says, I've been wrestling with for a long time. So that's why I call it a journey of work, theology, and the gospel. So to start off, Drew Carey says, oh, you hate your job, why didn't you say so? There's a support group for that. It's called Everybody, and they meet at the bar. So there's some truth to that. There's some things that we can hear from that, but I really hope that after our discussion tonight, you guys will see that actually we don't need to hate our jobs. We don't need to be at battle with them. We can bring the gospel alongside of what we do and have it influence that. So hopefully we'll grow from that. So this is just a little bit of an overview of what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you a little bit about definitions of what work is, what those definitions are. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. I'm going to cover some myths that many people hold about work. And you may think, well, those are obvious. But actually, if you think about it and how they apply and how you maybe move through your work life, you may see that some of those myths are coming up and they're robbing from your joy. And so I'll be talking about a biblical view and a broken view, trying to redeem our work. And I'll stop along the way and try and give some gospel applications of this. So a couple of definitions. These are straight from Google. Vocation, person's employment or main occupation, especially regarded as particularly worthy and requiring great dedication. The Latin word vocare actually means to call, and we'll talk about that later on here. But vocation, there is an element to it which involves calling, okay? So what you're doing here relates with what you do tomorrow, Monday morning, right? So that's one of the things I want to wake up for you. Career, it's an occupation undertaken for a significant period of a person's life with opportunities for progress. So Benji shared this with me. If you're like a normal human, you watch TV for about 30 hours a week, which seems crazy. You talk on your cell phone for about 14 hours a week. You sleep for 38 hours and you work for 40. Okay? So that, if you think about that, work is the number one thing. Of all things that we do, it's the largest chunk that we spend during the work week, or during the week, right? This last definition, someone's got to write Google on this, but it moves swiftly and in an uncontrolled way in a specified direction. So hopefully that's not our careers, right? Hopefully we've got a little bit more than just that. So my story, I grew up in the country. We didn't work on a farm, but we lived out in the country. And I was taught a strong work ethic. And I can remember a day in my life, I was about 13, and my dad every Saturday thought that it was fun to get up and cut down trees and mow the lawn, and he'd get up really early, and I'd wake up to either the lawnmower outside my window or a chainsaw. And it was always, oh, here we go again. But I remember when I was 13, there was one day that I worked beginning to end, came in, took a shower, sat down for supper, and I remember thinking, that was a good day. It was the first time I realized there's joy in this work, right? So I grew up with that. I studied engineering in college. I was married when I was a sophomore in college, and I was challenged by the minister of the college fellowship that I was involved with. You really should go into ministry for at least a year before you go into full-time vocation. Due to my life circumstances at that time, I really didn't feel that was an option. And so when I went to work, I thought, I'm selling out. That was the thought I had. Instead of going into full-time ministry, here I am, I'm selling my soul, I'm going to make money. Which was really disheartening, right? Because I really wanted to follow Christ. Did anyone else here feel a little bit like that? Anyone else have the boldness to raise your hand and say, I didn't feel called to full-time ministry, so I did this, and right? But then, while I was at work, I was sitting next to someone else that was a believer, loved Jesus, and he opened my eyes to the idea that this is a mission field. If you went into full-time ministry, went overseas, these people that you're working with don't have the opportunity to hear the gospel because you'd be over there, not here. So that opened my eyes to the idea that this workplace is a mission field. And that is absolutely true. But more recently, I've been challenged to think even beyond that. Our workplace is not just a mission field. We don't just work next to people to share the gospel with them. We work in ways, like Matt was talking about, to bless other people. And so that idea, certainly we need to share the gospel, and I don't want to diminish that. But if you spend 40 hours a week at work sharing the gospel and you don't get your work done, you are not a good worker. And you may say, well, I'm doing it for the kingdom. But you know what? You'll be fired, okay? Unless your job is to do that, you're going to be fired. So then you look at it and go, okay, is what I'm doing, how do I connect that to the gospel? How do I connect that to my what I feel is most important in my life, and that is eternity, the kingdom of God. What does God want done, right? So this really elevated for me, and I didn't know what it was called when I had this thought, but it's Gnosticism. It's this idea that there is a secular life and there is a spiritual life, and they are separate. And I'm sorry, secular life and a spiritual life. And a spiritual life, that's good. And the secular life, that's bad. That's Gnosticism, and the Bible does not teach that. That is heresy. That's wrong, okay? So there's, in the readings that you were suggested, there was the Dorothy Sayers essay. So I'm going to be quoting from that. I'm going to be quoting from Tim Keller, some other people, but I'm going to let Dorothy Sayers speak to this one. So this is just good. Gnosticism is not biblical. It is the business of the church to recognize that the secular vocation, as such, is sacred. Christian people, and particularly perhaps the Christian clergy, must get it firmly into their heads that when a man or woman is called to a particular job of secular work, that is as true a vocation as though he or she were called to specifically religious work. It is not right for her or the church to acquiesce in the notion that a man's life is divided into the time that he spends on his work and the time he spends in serving God. He must be able to serve God in his work, and the work itself must be accepted and respected as the medium of divine creation. In nothing has the church so lost her hold on reality as in her failure to understand and respect the secular vocation. She has allowed work and religion to become separate departments and is astonished to find that, as a result, the secular work of the world is turned to purely selfish and destructive ends, and that the greater part of the world's intelligent workers have become irreligious or at least uninterested in religion. Right? So that's why this quote is why I love this LDI off-road, because what you guys are doing is to combat that, right? We are called to weave the gospel, pull it through every part of our lives. That's what your cohorts are for, that's what the people around you are for, that's what Hope is for, is to help you figure out how does the gospel weave through everything that we do. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a few of the myths here. And I just want to challenge you, listen to these, because I think they do help you think through how could this myth be affecting the way I work. So this is one of the biggest ones. Work is a result of the fall. So the fall happens in Genesis 3. These quotes are from Genesis 1 and 2. Sin has not entered the world yet, okay? In the beginning, and I'm not going to read them all. You know them. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. God creates. That is work. Artists in the room, you know that creativity, that's work. Got to do it. Got to work at it. Genesis 2 says, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. So God is working, right? Genesis 2:15, the Lord took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. So God works. Jesus says in Matthew that I've been working with my Father who continues to work, right? So God's been working. Jesus works. The truth is, toil is a result of the fall, right? So our work is touched. Because of our sin, the whole world is touched by that. It's cracked, it's broken. So cursed is the ground because of you, right? It will produce thorns and thistles. By the sweat of your brow, these are things that you are familiar with. If you work, you're familiar with thorns and thistles. So what are the modern day thorns and thistles? Miscommunication, computer viruses, these things, right? Overrun bureaucracy, broken tools. So that toil is a result of the fall. So if you're frustrated with toil, you should be, right? That's not what we were created for. And actually, as Rob said, I've been processing this. So this is in the white space of Scripture. And so I'm still churning on this. But I think it's very possible that we will work for all eternity. But the fall will be gone. So I think it's possible that Jesus will return and say, the fall is gone. Now redeem the earth. Rebuild. Remodel. Fix. Fix that crack in the sidewalk. Recreate. Join me. And can you imagine the joy of work when the toil is gone? No miscommunication. You'll be able to have 8 hours of work, not 6, right? I'm serious. That's a result of the fall. It totally is. And it's very true. If you get 8 hours of work in a day, you've worked for 10. You've been there for 10. It's just the way it happens. So my quote of Tim Keller. So this is my copy of Every Good Endeavor. I like showing this because I think it's funny. So I got this. I bought it on Amazon. And this is the book, right? So I got it and the jacket was on it. And I open it up, and it's upside down. And it's mistrimmed. Bottom of the book is mistrimmed. So I was going to return it, and I thought, well, if I ever meet Tim Keller, I'm going to have him sign it. Because I think he'll think that's funny. Every good endeavor, and it's, just real close. But he actually talks about this here, right? This is not real encouraging. Tim Keller is normally encouraging, but this quote is reality full force, right? Just because you cannot realize your highest aspirations in your work does not mean you have chosen wrongly or are not called to your profession, or that you should spend your life looking for the perfect career that is devoid of frustration. That would be fruitless. You should expect to regularly be frustrated in your work, even though you may be in exactly the right vocation. I think that our youth today are told, find the best job you can. Find a job that you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. I'm sorry, that's BS. Okay? You will find frustration in your work. You will. Now, you can enjoy your work, and you should, and we'll talk about that more. But if you spend your time saying, well, 80% of this job I don't like, and 20% I do, this must not be my job. Maybe, but maybe not. We are going to be frustrated. It's called toil. It's called the fall. Okay? So Truths about work. Work is not a result of the fall. It is a gift that God has given, okay? And there is no perfect job. All jobs are broken by the fall. So our application on this, let's pause here. How has your attitude towards work been shaped by the lies or myths about the source of work? When I actually discovered, hey, wait a minute, work is not a result of the fall. I got to admit, I've been a Christian for a long time. When I finally realized, wait a minute, it's the toil. And I realized it had really embedded into my psyche, my thought, and how I conducted myself. And are you working just for the weekend? Right? Do you just Friday, finally. Right? I think you can recalibrate, reshape the way you think about your work and use the gospel to do that. So I'm just going to cover a couple of things on things that I have found helpful in redeeming my view of work. Okay? So our work is an extension of God's work. So here, this is Genesis 2, 8 through 22. I'm not going to read this all, but what I want to point out here is I've just gone through here and I've highlighted the different jobs that God is doing in Genesis 2 alone. Okay? He planted a garden. He made trees that were pleasing to the eye. Aesthetic is important to God. He's an artist. He's an arborist. Put a tree in the middle of the garden. He's an engineer. He actually separated the waters. Here, I want this one to go here. I want this one to go here. Civil engineering. He's a manager. He delegated, appointed to Adam, right? Which, when you think about it, well, I think I'm going to cover this later, but Adam is given the task by God, and God invites him into finishing the work, right? We have a delegation from God. He's a counselor. It's not good for man to be alone. And he counsels here. He's a sculptor. It says, out of the ground, the Lord God formed out of the ground the wild animals. Think of that. When you look at a wild animal and you see the shape of the muscle in their leg or whatever, he formed that, he shaped that, he sculpted that. It's beautiful. He's a surgeon. He took a rib out of Adam's side. Anesthesiology, the whole thing. Right? Scalpel, the whole thing. He's got it going. He's a marriage counselor. These are things that God has done just in Genesis 2. Okay? So our work is an extension of God's work. This, Tim Keller talks about this in his book. I love it. In Genesis 2, it starts off with a garden. And in Revelation 22, there's a city. Okay? What are the implications of that? God creates the earth, and it's good. But it's not done. And he gives it to man, and he says, manage it. It's your job. Make culture. Gives us the cultural mandate. Right? So God starts in a garden, and we are involved in creating the culture and creating cities, creating structure. These are things that God wants done. And it's beautiful to think that we are actually involved in that, right? So we go from a garden to the city. Okay, so what time am I supposed to be done? Okay, I'll blitz through this. This is Genesis 11. The point that I'm trying to make here is this is the Tower of Babel. So the point here, the people of Babel are actually taking technology and they're building a city. So is building the city wrong? Starts in a garden, ends in a city. That's not wrong. But why did they do it, right? So come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. That's technology. That's the first time we see baking of bricks. So that's new. Come, let us build for ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. So they misapplied technology. Their motivation was pride. They had a thirst for their own identity, right? and they had a fear of aloneness. That is the cultural mandate broken. And if you look around, we see that still in our culture now. So Keller says, Babel is a pointed case study of the impossibility of building any collective endeavor, a society, an organization, a movement that really works unless it's grounded beyond itself and in God. So how does your job or your career mimic what God has already done? So I believe that every legitimate job either mimics a job that God has already done, or is a way of extending His gospel. Okay, so you can, if you look at your job, how does that either mimic something God has done or has already done, and how does that fit into what you do? How is your job or career extension of what God has already started? And how would your work day be different if you started, what does God want done today? So I love what Matt was talking about, right? If you actually start your day with prayer, and when you sit down, I would encourage you, when you sit down with your list, either your weekly list or your daily list, utter a 30-second prayer at that moment and say, God, direct my hands now. What do you want done today? And then start in on your list. And think about that. Put it in that perspective. It may transform how you do your work. Okay. Another idea of redeeming work. Every legitimate job imparts dignity. So Genesis 1, 26 and 27, it says, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish. God created man in His own image. In the image of God, He created him, right? And in Genesis 2, it says, the Lord God had planted a garden in the east. He planted a garden. He did not create a garden. I believe that the Lord God, this is in the white space, so, okay, take it for what it's worth. I have this picture of God taking Adam into the garden and saying, okay, I planted this garden, now you've got to take care of it. Now here's how it's going to go. Gets down on one knee, digs up some dirt, and says, dig up the dirt, take the seed from this plant, put it in the ground, put the dirt over top of it. I'm going to cause it to rain. It's going to grow. You're going to harvest it. You're going to take some of that, put it back in the dirt. Our God has dirt under His fingernails. There is no job too low for a believer in Christ. Our God started as a gardener. How many times have you walked by someone mowing the lawn, right? Professional mowing the lawn thinking, wow, am I glad I don't have his job. That's God's job. That's where God starts. That's amazing when you think about it. It's dignity right there. I love it. This is a quote from Philip Jensen, Tony Payne. If God came into the world, what would He be like? For the ancient Greeks, He might have been a philosopher king. The ancient Romans might have looked for just a noble statesman. But how does the God of the Hebrews come into the world? He comes in as a carpenter. If you think about it, Jesus spent roughly 35 years on the face of the earth. 32 of that, were in the wood shop with His dad. Was that wasted time? Was He just passing time, waiting? I don't believe so. I believe Jesus was there demonstrating to us that work is valuable. There's things that God wants done through the wood shop. I love this picture. This is some beautiful woodwork here. I think Jesus picked up pieces of wood and looked at them crooked and twisted and thought, wow, this is a broken place. But then He took that and made it beautiful. Do you think Jesus completed His projects on time? Do you think He billed people for His work properly? Do you think He listened to the customer? Do you think He lived for the weekend? So how do we take this dignity, God gives dignity through work? How is that broken by the fall? So there's hierarchies, there's caste systems, there's stratification of status. There's, vice president, director, manager, people doing the work, right? Technicians, whatever. I'm an engineer, sorry. So that is broken. We need order, we need structure, but this hierarchy, this climbing of the ladder. And the example I like to use here, and I'm going to embarrass Benji. I asked him for his permission before, but in the medical community, this is pretty evident, and I think it's being deconstructed now. But doctors are kind of at the top, then nurses, then orderlies, then other people, and there's this. Well, you don't talk to people below you unless you need them, right? And Benji just has shared with me that you can break that down by tells everyone, just call me Benji. I'm Benji. But there are times when he walks into a room and he says, I'm the doctor. Not because he wants to put himself in that hierarchy position, but there's some people in the room that want to know, who's the doctor here, right? So, and that's a loving thing. I'm the doctor here, but to the people that he works with, just call me Benji, right? So we can break through that. The people that come through your office to empty your garbage, to clean your office, you can break right through this hierarchy. Treat them as people. Greet them. When you go to a fast food restaurant, you'd be amazed. Be amazed if you just looked at the person that across, and how are you today? Well, no one ever asks me, right? They're people. They matter. If you take that 10, 15 seconds, you can enter into someone's world, understand where they're at, and bless them. That's what we're called to do. So break through that. So the application here. All people do matter to God. All legitimate jobs ultimately were delegated by God. So how can you convey that value to the people that are doing the jobs that meet your basic needs? Tim Keller in his book, and actually in some of the sermons that you had in the additional reading and study that you could do, he makes the point that if the person cleaning your apartment that's in New York or cleaning your office, if they don't do that, you get sick and die. Right? That's your basic needs. A clean office, clean workspace, garbage taken out. I love the garbage guy. Think about it. I put my garbage can at the end of the driveway with everything I don't want, and I come home and it's empty. That's amazing, right? It's a blessing, right? Thank you for that. So, and do you value and express appreciation for those jobs that are helping you get done what needs to be done? I'm going to read this. We came across this in a Facebook post, and it's a rebuke to us Christians. Okay, so listen to the truth behind what this person is saying. Okay, it says, when my mom was having surgery and I was in the waiting room, there was a family there as well. The doctor came out and gave them good news about their relative's surgery, and they immediately grabbed hands, formed a prayer circle. They didn't thank the surgeon, who was standing right there, for saving their grandma's life, but they thanked some non-existent sky king. I have never wanted to slap so many people at once as I did at that moment. Thank the surgeon. Think about, God has granted them the gifts, the ability to study. Whether they believe in Jesus or not, they are carrying out something that God wants done. You can thank them. Thank you for your work. I appreciate your care that you've given, right? Let's make sure that that's part of our culture as well. And yes, praise God for the great surgery that happened. Absolutely. Thank the people that God put in place. If you think about it, did they get a good night's sleep? How did they get in a good, did they study well? You want your doctor to be well studied, right? So thank them for that, right? Okay. Okay. Fit and calling. Many of you might be asking this if you're just graduating from college. What is the right career for me? How do I find the right job? Am I doing the right work? And these are the verses that I would encourage you to think about with regard to that. I call it your fit. Does this job fit you? What are you called to? Right? But we're often duped. I call it the salary trap, okay? So the verses here are very common. They're very common when we talk about this. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, or moths and vermin destroy, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. But there's actually a section of this passage that I took out, which is right here. The reason I took it out is because it doesn't feel like it fits. And I credit Tim Keller for illuminating this for me. But it says, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? And which one of these is not like the other? Does that sound like that doesn't fit? How does that fit here? Why, right? Think about it. It feels awkward. What I think is being said here is if we are serving money, we are blind. And if we are blind, we can't see things around us properly. Think about that with regard to a job. It is the salary trap. It will dupe you. We should be thinking not about how can I make more money. You certainly have to think, okay, can I support my family? Is this appropriate? Am I being compensated properly? Not disregarding that. But be careful, because you can be duped. If your eye becomes blind, you will not know where you are at. So I encourage you, as you think about these questions, consider, am I being duped? Best way to handle, or one of the good ways to handle that, ask the people in gospel community around you, I'm thinking of taking this job change. Can you help me think through this? I put down my pros and cons. I'm thinking about this. Ask me some questions. We all need that in our lives, right? So it keeps us from being blind. So what are ways that you can battle pride or envy that pressures us and relates as it relates to financial status? So, all right, competence. Whatever you do, do it with all your heart, as if we're working for the Lord, not for men. Your competence is a way of blessing people around you. Tim Keller in his book talks about a pilot going in for flying, and part of the fuselage rips off. People are sucked out of the airplane. A couple of people, right? He's the pilot. And he says, they asked him, how did you handle that situation? He said, I said a prayer and I got to work. Now, if he hadn't studied and practiced routines and flying, right, he wouldn't have landed that plane well. His competence saved a lot of people's lives. Now, for some of you, you may not see that directly, but your competence does bless people around you. Your job is connected to something that God wants done. So if you think about that, how can what I'm doing in my job, help advance what God wants done? So, okay, this is the money quote here. I'll let Dorothy Sayers speak for herself here. How can anyone remain interested in religion which seems to have no concern with 9/10 of his life? The church's approach to an intelligent carpenter is usually confined to exhorting him to not be drunk and disorderly in his leisurely hours and to come to church on Sundays. What the church should be telling him is that it is the very first demand that his religion makes upon him is that he should make good tables. Church, by all means, and decent forms of amusement certainly, but what use is it that if at the very center of his life and occupation, he is insulting God with bad carpentry? No crooked table legs or ill-fitting drawers ever, I dare swear, came out of the carpenter's shop at Nazareth. Nor, if they did, could anyone believe that they were made by the same hand that made heaven and earth. No piety in the worker will compensate for work that is not true to itself, for any work that is untrue to its own technique is a living lie. That is good. that Dorothy Sayers essay is really good that way. So, competence in your work. So these are just different ways. Dentist, your filling should be complete and careful, right? Doctor, your care should be gentle and thoughtful. Cook, your meals should be creative and tasty. Please, we like creative and tasty food. It's good. So how does competence in your job bless those around you? So think about it. You should be good students of your job. You should be competent in what you're doing. And how does your standing in Christ influence your skill development? That's it. That's not where we're at. That was from a previous. So you're here today on Sunday. Tomorrow, you're going to go to work. You're going to sit down. You're going to probably think about how you plan your work a little bit differently. You're going to sit down and you're going to think to yourself, how is what I'm going to do today connected with what God wants done? Wrestle with the people in your cohorts. You should be able to verbalize, my job, my career is connected to the kingdom this way. What I do blesses other people this way. Challenge each other. Think through that. You should be able to make that connection and see how the gospel impacts what you do. So, that's it.